Dear Jim, I was wondering how you feel things would have gone for the Midnight Express if they had gone to Jim Crockett Promotions straight from Mid-South. With there being no rock and rolls, no TBS deal, Dusty still trying to build back up the houses after a poor 1984, and the only babyface team being Dusty and Manny, who rarely teamed despite being the champions. Do you think in hindsight you were better off coming in when you did?
Well,
great question, Dean.
Yes, that is an excellent question. And now let's remember it was only a 6-month period, though, from the time we were supposed to go until the time we actually did go. I think the Midnight Express would have done very well. Obviously, we did do well. I think they'd have done very well either way. I think the Rock and Roll Express would have come there either way. And it probably happened for the best the way it happened because Dusty was able to establish the rock and roll first before us in the Charlotte territory. Because even though the rock and roll started 1st of July, 85 by beating the Russians on Crockett's TV and winning the World Tag Team title, first time out, blew them over, fucking instantly got over. We started in July, but we started at the Atlanta end because they had absorbed the Atlanta territory. And we were on TBS and made only a few appearances in the Carolinas for the first 3 months. So the rock and roll were established, and here comes these guys who are going to take the fucking, the teeny bopper idols down. If we'd have gone first, Dusty would have still pushed us to the moon like he did because he wanted to begin with. But we would have, if Dusty and Manny were the only babyface team, we probably would have beaten them because Dusty would have put us over. But at the same time, because remember, when we first came in, we got over a Buzz and Brett Sawyer, and they weren't motivated to make us fucking look good. Jimmy Valiant and Superstar Billy Graham, which was not exactly the Midnight style of match.
No.
Etc. But because of the way that Dusty smashed us over on TV and put us over these names, we got over. So he would have still pushed us hard, and the rock and roll would have come in afterwards. I think it's better that we came in after the rock and roll were established. But either way, we would have ended up together. That's interesting. Who's to say what would have been better?
Let me ask you this, though. I don't remember the exact time. It was either the summer or maybe the fall of 85 when the partnership between Watts and Fritz, they were partners in several towns, I think in Oklahoma. And that's why you would have Kerry Von Erich making appearances on some of those house shows. And it falls apart. And again, Watts was the one who wanted you to go work for Fritz. It was a favor to Watts that you went there, that you didn't just follow through on your notice and go right to Jim Crockett Promotions. So what are you thinking when that relationship falls apart?
Well, see, here's the thing. And your timeline, I don't know when it officially fell apart, but the timeline was much earlier for when we all of a sudden weren't getting booked back in Mid-South because, and I mentioned going through this in my books for a couple of magazine articles I did. We went in January and February, we would work 4 or 5 days in the Dallas territory with the Fantastics. And they were doing, at the time, the Sportatorium was selling out every Friday night, which was, I believe, like a $35,000, $40,000 house, like 4,000 people, give or take, selling out every Friday night. They had the big events that they did, spot shows did well, etc. But we would go make Oklahoma City and Tulsa on a Sunday afternoon and evening for Watts and make as much on our payoff that day as we did work in the Dallas territory the rest of the week. And once again, Watts had more big towns. They had the Dallas Metroplex that you could make money in, and then you served your penance and made, good money on top in the South Texas and spot show towns if you were working with the Von Erichs, which we never got a chance to do, which may have had something to do with the fact we gave our notice first night in to begin with, but still. For January, and we got booked back in Houston Easter Sunday, which was the big 4-team elimination match, the Midnight Express, the Rock and Roll Express, the Fabulous Freebirds, and the Dirty White Boys, which was first time we got to work with Michael and Terry and Buddy, and that was a wild thing. And that was a $80,000 house, I believe, whatever. But right after, all of a sudden we noticed, for example, in April, I think it was, Watts is running the Superdome, and we're in Corsicana, Texas at the rodeo arena. After February, with the exception of that Houston show, which may have been a favor to Paul Bosch more than anybody, we weren't going back to Mid-South anymore. And they were still running these big shows. And, and Dundee said one time, well, they said they couldn't, spare you on that day. So all of a sudden, it just by March, really, that wasn't happening anymore. And so then for the next few months, we're like, well, wait a minute. We came here as a favor to Bill so that we could come back and make his big shows, but now we're not going back and making his big shows. And we're sitting here when we should be in Charlotte, and all of a sudden they're on TBS. So we were averaging $1,000 a week, working an average of 5 days a week with short trips. We were in town twice a week. Dallas was a paid vacation, and a lot of guys would have loved to have been in that spot at that time. And $1,000 then is about $3,000 a day. And, the only time you ever were in a hotel was if you went to South Texas or out to West Texas and couldn't get the Southwest flight back. But we had turned down an offer to go to not only the biggest NWA territory in the country, but one that was now on TBS on the invitation of the world champion and the fucking booker. And we're like, what the fuck? We're giving this as long as we can over here. And that's when we got that Texas Stadium payoff, which I believe was $1,100 or $1,200 for Texas Stadium each. And all right. And that's when we called Crockett back.
We should talk about this more, maybe on the Experience. This is a great topic.
We should do that. We should that whole period we went from main eventing the Superdome on Thanksgiving night to getting booked in Charlotte because they told us we were finishing up, to then being booked also in Dallas because that's where they wanted us to go. But then given notice in Dallas, then getting our sympathy card played. Well, you owe a lot to Bill Watts. Okay. And we go to Dallas and blah, blah, blah. Then and then we end up having the tag team title match in Reunion Arena Christmas night. So we go from the Superdome. We're going to go to Charlotte. No, we're going to go to Dallas. No, we're going to go to Charlotte. No, we're going to go to Dallas and debut in Dallas Christmas night at Reunion Arena in front of 20,000 people. That was an interesting month.
Pretty nuts.
It was nice to be in such demand back when there was places you actually really wanted to work.
Well, that's the end of the era where there were actually multiple places you could work.
Therein lies the problem. Yeah, well, let's do more of that on the Experience this week. Of course, now the timeline, we don't know when people will be listening to this, so just listen to every Experience and every drive-through so you won't miss anything.